This conference will now be recorded.
It's now being recorded. Great. And so you can refer back to it if you have questions after the fact or need to hop off early or anything like that. So I want to start by saying that my name's Ellie Fulbeck. I work for the American Institutes for Research, and I'm joined by some of my colleagues here. And we are conducting a comprehensive literacy program evaluation, which includes an ongoing evaluation of the Striding Readers Comprehensive Literacy Grants, the 2019 CLSD grants, and the now launching 2020 CLSD grants. So we're thrilled to be here with you today and welcome you to our session. And we'll go ahead and get started. So I want to start by just sharing a quick overview of our agenda today. There's 4 parts to our session. We'll start with some introductions and provide you with an overview of the CLSD National Evaluation. And then we'll spend the bulk of our time talking about one component of the National Evaluation, which is the impact study. Then we'll spend a little time just discussing next steps and then turn it to you all for questions and answers. We have 90 minutes today and plan to do the question and answer portion at the end. But as I think you guys have seen already, there's a little talk bubble in your GoToMeeting that is the chat, and you're welcome to type out your questions as you think of them. You don't have to wait until the end, and then we'll read those aloud when we get to the Q&A portion of this. So starting with introductions and the overview, I want to start by introducing the participants for the webinar, and we'll start with the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. And if folks have access to their cameras and are so inclined, please feel free to turn your camera on when you say hello. So we'll start with Cindy Savage, who is the Department of Education's team lead for CLSD and previously for Circle. Cindy, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everybody. So glad you're here and excited to be working with you all as we begin this adventure.
Thanks, Cindy. And next, Sylvia Lyles, who's the Director of the Office of Academic Improvement in the Department of Education's OESE. Sylvia, would you like to say hello?
So hi, everybody. Thank you so much. It's so great to have an opportunity to converse with you today. You new grantees, well, some of you guys are new grantees, and it gives us an opportunity to let you know, of course, about the evaluation, but also just to say hello to you because we're going to be in this thing for the next 5 years together. So thank you for being here, and you're going to hear from me a little bit later. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Georgia, and Michelle is our group leader. So Michelle works with Cindy and the team. I think they're going to introduce some more of the team so that you'll have a picture of what office looks like in terms of the are actually doing the work to help you to be able to do the work that you're doing. So Michelle.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sylvia. My name is Michelle Georgia. I am the group leader for, as Sylvia said, I'm the group leader for the Academic Improvement Group. And the Academic Improvement Group oversees a couple of programs, the Circle and CLSD program, as well as the Javits Gifted and Talented program. And the team encompasses Cindy, as you've just met, as well as 2 other members, Jen Brianis. Jen, are you online? I don't know if Jen's with us. And Gay Ojugbina. Gay, are you with us? Oh,
I am.
Gay, are you? I think I see you. Gay, are you? Can you put on your video and share with everybody? Say hello to everybody there.
Can you? I'm not sure if you all can see me, but everyone.
There you go. There's Gay. And I'm not sure if Jen's there. She might join us a little bit later, but we're all happy to be here this afternoon, and we look forward to working with everyone. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Michelle and Gay, Sylvia, Cindy. So next I'd like to introduce Tracy Ringes from the Institute of Education Sciences, who oversees the national evaluation for the Department of Education. Tracy, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for making the time this afternoon. As Ellie just said, I work in the Institute of Education Sciences, which is the Department of Education's research, evaluation, and statistics arm. I work in the unit that does evaluations of federal education programs, as well as specific interventions that can be used within federal education programs. And we're all very excited to get the fiscal 2020 CLSD grantees incorporated into the work we're doing. So thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Okay, so now I'll introduce some of my colleagues from American Institutes for Research. First, we'll start with Mike Garrett, who's the co-PI of this work. Mike, would you like to say hello?
Hello, I'm very glad to have this opportunity to begin talking. I'm a co-principal investigator of the project, and I'm especially interested in evaluation research methods and teacher development. As I say, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Thanks, Ellie.
Thank you. And then we have Jessica Heppen from AIR, who directs the national evaluation with Mike and myself. Jess, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. So great to be here with you. Hope you're all doing well. My name is Jessica Heppen. As Ellie said, at AIR, I get to serve as the project director for the overall evaluation, the comprehensive literacy program evaluation, which includes the implementation study of CIRCLE and the impact evaluation of CLSD. And just again, thank you for your time and for joining us, and congratulations to you all again.
Thanks, Jess. And then we have Becca Smith from AIR, who supports the CLSD national evaluation with Mike and Jess and myself. Becca, would you like to say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Becca Smith. I'll be monitoring the chat today, so please keep questions coming. Like Ellie said, we'll address them towards the end if we have time. So thanks, and thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you, Becca. And again, I'm Ellie Fulbeck. I work with Mike and Jess and Becca and all of the colleagues that have already introduced themselves from OESC and IES, and we're very happy to have you. So let's keep moving. We'd like to give you all a chance now to introduce yourselves and just for us to see who from the 11 CLSD 20 grantees we have joining us. And so we'll unmute everyone so they can say hello. If you have access to a camera and you're feeling like you want to turn that camera on, that's great. We would love to see you. If not, we understand that too. And we'll just go in alphabetical order. So if there's someone here from the state, if you could please say your name and maybe what your role is on your CLSD grant, that would be great. So we'll start with Arizona.
Hi, this is Sean Ross.
Okay, go ahead, Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean Ross. I'm the Deputy Associate Superintendent of Academic Standards at the Arizona Department of Education. With me is Lori Masur, who's our Director of Early Childhood. And we have a couple team members here today. I believe Laura Lee, who's our project manager, is with us as well. And we're very excited to be participating in the grant.
Great, thanks, Sean, and welcome everyone. How about from Colorado?
Hi, everyone. My name is Angie Galanos, and I direct the preschool through third grade office for the Department of Education here in Colorado, and it's just me on today, but looking forward to learning more.
Great, welcome. And how about from Florida?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carrie Miller. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Literacy Achievement, and we have a few of us on the call. I believe Carrie Sweet, as well as Rebecca Mead, and Kim Ward, which is our project manager for the CLSD grant. So thank you for having us.
Great, welcome. And how about from Louisiana?
Hi, I'm Sharon Nikes. I'm the Director of Humanities here at the Department of Education in Louisiana. I'll be supporting our project director, who's Chanda Johnson, and she couldn't make it today. So really happy to be part of this.
Great, I'm glad you could make it. Thanks so much. How about from Massachusetts?
Hi, everybody. This is Catherine Tarka. I'm the Director of Literacy and Humanities in Massachusetts, and I'm the project director, and my colleague Craig is here.
I'm Craig. I'll be leading the evaluation part of the grant.
Great. Thank you guys for joining. And how about from Michigan?
This is Brandy Boogme. I'm the literacy manager at the Michigan Department of Education, and I've got Shelley Probstl and Julie Bramer on the call who are co-leading this work along with me.
Welcome. And how about Missouri?
Hi, I'm Lisa Serino. I am the Standards and Assessment Administrator in the Office of College and Career Readiness in Missouri. And Lisa Scroggs, who hopefully will soon be our Missouri Program Manager, is also with me today.
You may still be on mute, Lisa.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Oh, good. So you couldn't hear me at all before?
No, but now we
All
can.
right.
This is a good test for making sure that everybody can can ask their questions later.
Well, apologies then. I'm Lisa Serino. I am the Standards and Assessment Administrator in the Office of College and Career Readiness in Missouri. And Lisa Scroggs is with me. She will soon be our Missouri Program Manager.
Yes, and I'm sorry, the two Lisas have me through. We could hear you, Lisa, but we can't hear other Lisa. So maybe, yeah, we'll have to do some chatting to get your input. But welcome, both of you. How about from Tennessee?
Hi, this is Lisa Combs, Chief of Standards and Materials. I oversee all the early childhood standards and literacy work within our agency, and then I will kick it to Dothry.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. My name is Dothry Chunduru. I work on the research and evaluation team. I work with Lisa, and I also have Adam Rollins on this call who focuses on literacy initiatives.
Great, welcome. All right, and how about from Texas?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lily Locks. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of School Programs, currently serving as the Project Director here in Texas. And I'm joined by Francesca Leahy and Leslie Patton today, who are helping with all sorts of aspects of this project as we get up and running and are also excited to start.
Wonderful, welcome. And how about from Washington, D.C.?
Good afternoon. I'm LaShondra Scroggins, Director of Teaching and Learning at the Office of the State Superintendent of Education. And I'm joined by my colleague, Laura Montas Brown, who will assist us with data collection analysis.
Great, welcome. And last but certainly not least, how about from Wyoming? Oh no, we might be missing Wyoming, or Wyoming might be on mute. All right, I think that was enough wait time, but we'll make sure that folks from Wyoming have access to the recording as well from this. So thank you and welcome again, everybody. All right, so now I'm gonna pass the mic to my colleague, Mike, to discuss the national evaluation and provide you all with an overview. And Sylvia will join as well to talk about the importance of grantee and sub-grantee participation. So Mike?
Thank you. Well, I think, as you all know, a rigorous national evaluation is required by Congress. It was described in the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And the mandate requires an evaluation of the CLSD grant to each state and the sub-grant programs, and that it includes high quality, rigorous research about both implementation and impact. And the regulations require grant recipients to participate in the evaluation. But I think beyond the requirement, the evaluation is actually very exciting and important for other reasons. In particular, the program is really quite interesting and unusual. Interesting in that it requires the use or encourages the use of evidence-based programs and practices, and it has specific goals for comprehensive literacy instruction and requires attention across all ages and grades, starting with pre-kindergarten all the way through grade 12. Also, what I think is extremely interesting in terms of an evaluation like this is that the program leaves a great deal up to the states to figure out exactly how the program will be designed and how it will be focused. And so this means that an evaluation like this has the opportunity to understand how the 11 states are approaching the program, and to what extent are the approaches similar and different, and how do these play out. As I've mentioned, the evaluation has two components, an implementation study and an impact study, and I want to talk about the two very briefly. But first, I wondered, Sylvia or Cindy, do you have anything to add to what I've said about the purposes of the evaluation?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to thank Tracy and she introduced herself earlier, from IES. We have worked with Tracy in other areas, but to have the expertise of the team from IES with the ARR folks, I have to tell you, Dr. Garrett, that when you talk and when I have worked with you, Mike, if it's okay, I call you Mike. Mike, when I work for you, I think of you as the Dr. Fauci of research.
Oh my gosh, well,
it is we are so fortunate to have you as well as Ellen and others to be a part of this great work. And I just want to say why that's so important that we have the right people. Because Congress has required, as Mike has indicated, that this is, this research is and a rigorous evaluation is part of this particular program. That's not in all programs, but I really do believe that Congress, the people who make the decision about funding, really believes in the work around literacy, because we know from the research that in order for our kids, our children to grow to get through the work in school, that they have to know how to read and understand what they're reading and comprehending what they're reading. So I really do believe that this is a wonderful opportunity. We have the right experts with us to help us to collect the data, tell the story about the work that we're doing with the CLSD program. And if I will, I would also like to suggest that the data might not be as we want it to be. We may not be able to show that through the impact study, specifically through the impact study, and the team will talk about that. That 101, that for every lesson that we give, we're seeing 3 grade level improvements. But here's the thing, it'll be able to tell us what we are seeing, hopefully, the changes, not the changes, but what we are experiencing through the practices and the processes that you put in place, and how we might be able to make some adjustments to the program and to our work to be able to make it better. And this is our opportunity to be able to talk about that. For the implementation study, it helps my team to be able to think about and to select the right type of technical assistance for you that might help you to be able to pull in, to select the best practices that work for what you believe are the right interventions for your students. So I see this, and I know evaluation, it's a lot of work. You got to do the program and implement the program while you're also dealing with and collecting data and dealing with the evaluators. I understand that, and that's why I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that that you're going to participate in this work. and that you're going to be there with your expertise to be able to tell us about what it is, the data that you're collecting. So I take this opportunity to encourage you to ask questions today so that you know how it's going to work and what some of the options, responsibilities, the roles, the team will talk to you about that. So without any further ado, Eleanor, thank you so much for the opportunity just to encourage people to do this work. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Cindy, do you want to add to what Sylvia has said?
No, I think I just agree and support Sylvia's explanation there. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Well, in that case, let's turn to the next slide. So as I said, and as Sylvia said, the evaluation has two components. The implementation study will focus on all 11 states and all of the sub-grantees that you eventually make awards to in your states. And our team will work with you to carry out the following tasks. First, we want to collect existing statewide data on student demographics and reading achievement. I say existing, of course, last spring, there weren't statewide tests in reading achievement, and we don't know what to anticipate this spring. So we'll work with you to collect what data there are as time goes on. Second, we want to conduct an interview with someone from your state who's knowledgeable about your grant. And we'll do that, it's probably the CLSD project director, but we'll do that in the spring of 2022 after the subgrants have been made and the districts are underway. And finally, we'll administer an online survey in the spring of 2022 to all subgrantees that you've made awards to. And this is about a 30-minute survey, and it asks the subgrantees what they're doing with the funds that have been awarded. So our main ask for you is to participate in our interview next spring and to encourage the grantees to work with us, the subgrantees, to participate in the survey. But all of these activities are a ways in the future, so we're just letting you know about what will happen in the spring of 2022. The second component, and the one that we're really focusing on today, is the impact study. And here, what we're trying to do is understand to what extent receiving Circle funds and engaging in Circle supported activities results in positive outcomes for students. And the study will focus on about 130 elementary schools in some subgrantees across your 11 states. We think that there might be about 20, let's say 22 districts altogether. So that would be about 2 per state, and about 6 elementary schools might participate in each district to reach the roughly 130. And so this is not something, the implementation study covers all subgrantees. The impact study will be conducted in a small number of subgrantees. And within each of the subgrantees, we will focus on elementary schools only. And what we plan to do is conduct a lottery. Say a subgrantee has 6 participating elementary schools. We would assign 3 by lottery to begin their CLSD funded work in the fall of 2021, next fall, and the other 3 to begin their CLSD funded work 2 years later. We call these the first and the second funding group. And our reason for doing this is because we want to be able to compare what's happening in schools that are receiving funding with a very comparable group of schools that are not receiving funding. And the lottery will ensure that the 2 groups are very comparable. And then we'll be able to figure out whether receiving CLSD funds had an impact on student outcomes. This design is valuable in terms of estimating impact. We think it's also valuable for other reasons, and in particular, by selecting a group of schools to implement the funded activities next fall, your sub-grantees can look at how things are working in those sub-grantees and draw on what's learned, perhaps to implement things even better in the second funding group. So it's an opportunity for continuous improvement, trying things out in some schools and then using what's learned to implement things in a second batch of schools. So our ask here, which is what Ellie's now going to be talking about, is to encourage some of your districts to participate should they win subgrants. So we realize this is all in the future. You're just beginning to conduct your competitions, and the timing of the subgrants and so forth will differ across states. But this is our basic approach, and I want to turn now to Ellie to talk about this in more detail. So back to you, Ellie.
Thanks, Mike. All right, so I'm going to describe the CLSD impact study in a bit more detail, and I'm going to break it out into kind of an overview of how it's going to work. And then I'll talk a bit about our requests of and benefits for you all at the state who will be participating in the study, and then our requests of and benefits for district subgrantees that may participate in the study, as well as the eligibility requirements for them to be able to participate. So starting with how it works. The CLSD impact study could be broken down into 4 steps. So in this first step, you're going to invite districts to apply for subgrants just as you would if there were no study. So in this first year of your grant, you're going to set up your subgrant competitions and you're going to make subgrant awards to some number of districts. The districts that win subgrants will receive funds from you and will begin implementing their CLSD activities in grant years 2 through 5. And we know from reviewing your applications that different states have different timelines for their subgrant activities and competitions, and that some states plan to have 4-year subgrants, some states plan to have subgrants that last for fewer years. So we'll work with you to figure all of that out, but this is just sort of a general overview. So through your subgrant competition, you're going to select districts to win subgrants that are aligned to the priorities of the CLSD grant program, which focuses on serving low-income, high-need students across diverse geographic areas. And I want to make sure to just emphasize that the impact study will not affect which districts you all make subgrant awards to. That remains fully under your discretion to make subgrant awards to the districts as you see fit based on the criteria that you set. But as you prepare to invite districts to apply for subgrants, we ask that you work with us to figure out a way to communicate to them about the opportunity to participate in the impact study. So our only request of you in this first step is just to connect with our team to figure out a plan for how to talk with districts about the impact study. The second step is for districts to apply for subgrants based on the criteria that you set forth. Again, this would happen in the absence of the impact study. So while all districts that meet the eligibility criteria that you put out should apply for a subgrant clearly, those that have 4 or more elementary schools are going to be best suited to participate in the impact study. Although districts with 2 or more elementary schools will also be eligible. And we'll work with you to identify which districts meet your subgrant eligibility criteria and have enough elementary schools to participate in the study. And we'll encourage these districts to indicate their willingness to participate in the impact study at the time they complete their subgrant applications. So we've had states from the CLSD fiscal year 19 grantees. Some have asked that districts interested in the study indicate this on their application. Others have asked that they submit a letter of interest to our study team. So we can figure that out with you based on, your preferences. But our aim in this second step is to just have some eligible districts with 2 or more elementary schools that indicate to us in some way, either on their application or through a letter of intent or letter of interest, that they would be willing to participate in the impact study if they're selected by you all to receive a subgrant. So then in the third step, you all at the state review district applications. And as with the last two steps we just discussed, this would occur in the absence of the impact study, right? So you'll determine some number of subgrantees, you'll determine the amount of the awards that they get. And our hope is that some of these districts will be eligible for and interested in participating in the impact study. So we'll then work with those interested districts that win subgrants to finalize their participation in the study during this third step. And if more districts are interested than we can accommodate, we'll invite districts to participate in a way that's representative of the 11 grantee states. And if not enough districts indicate that they're interested prior to awards being announced, then we'll follow up with those that win subgrants and encourage them to consider joining the study. So by the time we get to this third step, we'll have some subset of subgrantees with 2 or more elementary schools that represent the 11 grantee states and are interested in participating in the impact study. So now what? The fourth step is the only additional step that will occur beyond what you would do anyway as part of your CLSD subgrant competition. In this step, we will randomly assign the elementary schools that are participating in the impact study within the participating districts to be in 1 or 2 groups. So this is what Mike was explaining a few minutes ago. So within each district, we'll randomly assign about half of the participating elementary schools to receive funding in the first 2 years of the subgrant period. And these are the little greenhouses that you'll see moving on your screen. The other half of the participating elementary schools will receive funding in the second 2 years of the subgrant, and those are the little blue houses. So I want to also emphasize that in this step, subgrantees retain full control over which elementary schools participate in their CLSD subgrant, but the timing of the funding and thus the timing of implementation of CLSD funded activities or practices or programs will be determined by a simple lottery that our study team will conduct. Okay, so now that you have a sense for how the impact study would work, I want to share our requests of you all and explain what the benefits are for you in participating in this study. So our requests for you as state grantees are quite minimal. We request that you work with us to communicate to subgrantees about the impact study and that you provide us with existing data. So here's a timeline that corresponds to the CLSD grant years. Here we are in the 2020-2021 school year. And this year we ask you to just work with us to incorporate the impact study option into your subgrant competition or otherwise develop a plan for ensuring that districts are aware of the impact study. So this might include identifying subgrant applicants that would be good candidates for the impact study and encouraging them to participate. And again, our goal, as Mike had said previously, is to get about 130 elementary schools across all 11 states to participate. And so we know that, again, the timing of this will vary from state to state, and we will align our efforts to communicate with districts about the impact study to your subgrant timelines. And then in fall of 2023, we ask that you provide us with existing achievement and background characteristic data for students in your state. And this will allow us to examine the impact of CLSD funding after 2 years. So by participating in the study, there are multiple benefits. First, by staggering the rollout of CLSD funds, you and the districts that participate in the study will be able to learn about and apply effective strategies, practices, and programs from the schools that implement early to other schools in the future. And this phased approach is conducive to a lot of the continuous improvement efforts that we know many states and districts are already engaged in. Second, we'll provide you with a customized report on CLSD in your state that can be used to inform future work related to student literacy. In addition, we'll support your participation in the impact study by assisting you to develop notices inviting subgrant applications that include the impact study option or otherwise develop a plan to communicate about the impact study to districts. and will ensure that you retain full control over which districts receive subgrants based on criteria that you set. So we've really designed the impact study to align to your subgrant competition and to your plans to the extent we can. So now let's turn to our requests of and benefits for the district subgrantees, as well as the eligibility requirements for subgrantees that may be interested in participating in the study. So like our requests of you all at the state, our requests of district subgrantees that participate in the impact study are minimal. We ask that they abide by the lottery results and that they complete surveys that will allow us to describe and report on implementation of CLSD in their districts. So again, here's the timeline that corresponds to the CLSD grant years. Here we are in the 2020-21 school year. So later this year, after we know which districts are interested in participating in the study and after you all have made your subgrant awards, our first ask of district subgrantees is that they allow us to conduct a simple lottery to randomly assign elementary schools to the first and second funding group. So schools in the first funding group, which are again depicted as the green schools here, will receive CLSD subgrant funds and implement CLSD activities and practices and programs in the first 2 subgrant years. Schools in the second funding group, which are depicted again as the blue schoolhouses here, will receive CLSD subgrant funds and implement CLSD activities in the second 2 years. So our first request of participating districts is that they abide by the results of the lottery and that they allocate CLSD funds accordingly to participating elementary schools. Our second request of districts is that they allow us to collect survey data in the first 2 subgrant years. So to document CLSD funded activities in the impact study schools, both the green and blue schools that are participating, we'll administer brief online surveys to principals or literacy leads and to English language arts or reading teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5, which are the focal grades for the study. And we will provide gift cards to compensate school staff for their time. I think Mike said that the surveys are quite short, under 30 minutes. And so our second request of participating districts is that they provide us with contact information for principals and teachers in the participating schools so that we may administer these brief surveys to them. So district subgrantees that participate in the impact study will receive multiple benefits. First, as is true of you all in the State Department, staggering the rollout of CLSD funds will allow us to learn about and apply effective strategies and practices and programs from the early implementers to other schools in the future. Second, we'll provide financial resources for participating in the study. So districts may receive $15,000 per participating elementary school, regardless of which funding group they are assigned. And I'll say a little bit more about the compensation for participating districts after clarifying the eligibility criteria on the next slide. In addition to these benefits, we'll support participating district subgrantees by ensuring that there's minimal disruption to their CLSD implementation. So in all cases, district subgrantees will retain full control over which schools receive CLSD funds based on their plans approved by you all at the state. I think it's worth restating, I know Mike had mentioned this, but again, we're focused on grades 3, 4, and 5, so this is just elementary schools. Subgrantees, may choose to apply for a CLSD subgrant for birth all the way through grade 12, and so their early childhood centers, their middle schools, their high schools would be unaffected by their participation in the impact study. It would just be the elementary schools. So, I'd like to describe the criteria for districts to participate in the impact study. And you'll see that these criteria align to your subgrant competition criteria. So first, districts must meet your eligibility criteria for a CLSD subgrant. Second, they must actually apply for a CLSD subgrant. Third, they must indicate their willingness to participate in the impact study, either on their applications or by submitting a letter of interest or a letter of intent to us. Fourth, they should have at least 2 elementary schools that they plan to include in their CLSD subgrant, although as I had mentioned before, districts that plan to include 4 or more elementary schools are best suited for the impact study. And finally, districts, in order to be eligible to participate in the impact study, actually have to receive a CLSD subgrant from you. So the only additional eligibility criteria that the impact study would require of districts beyond your CLSD subgrant competition is simply that they indicate their willingness to participate and that they be of a certain size, which is necessary for us to be able to randomly assign elementary schools to either the first or second funding group efficiently. And we know from our ongoing work with Circle grantees and last year's CLSD grantees that some of the districts that you're likely to fund through your subgrants may be smaller than this. So while we plan to prioritize larger districts with 4 or more elementary schools for the study, we're certainly open to including smaller districts with 2 or 3 schools. So if you're a state that has districts that tend to have fewer schools, fear not, we'll connect with you and we'll figure out a way to make that possible to the extent we can. Okay, so I mentioned a few slides back that will compensate districts for their participation in the impact study. So districts, again, can receive $15,000 per participating elementary school. And since districts with 4 or more elementary schools will be best suited to participate in the impact study, districts may receive compensation that totals $60,000 or more by participating in the study. And what's really cool is that districts have a lot of discretion over how to use these funds, and the total additional funds that our study team would provide districts for participating above and beyond the subgrant that you award them can be quite considerable. So there are a few restrictions that we're happy to discuss with you when we meet for our follow-up calls, but really districts have a lot of leeway in terms of how they allocate these funds. Okay, so now that everybody is super excited about the study, let's discuss what happens next. So the next step is for me or one of my colleagues to reach out to you in the next few days to schedule a time to chat further about your participation in the study. And in particular, when we meet, we're hoping to learn more about your plans related to your subgrant competition timeline. As I had mentioned before, we've reviewed all of your applications, and we know there's some variation in timelines, so we'd like to talk with you a little bit about that, as well as your eligibility criteria and the number of districts you anticipate may be eligible for a subgrant. And then we'll work with you to figure out a plan for how to notify districts of the impact study opportunity. So there's no action that you need to do right now. We'll follow up with you in the next few days, and we'll schedule a time to meet, and we're happy to address questions and discuss your specific state context in that meeting if we don't get to that today. So now I think we're ready to open it up to you all so that you may ask questions about the national evaluation in general or about the impact study component of the evaluation in particular. And so I think we can unmute phones so that people can ask their questions verbally. But if you could just mute yourself if you're not talking, again, that's very appreciated. And I know I can't read I'm bad at reading and talking, but I could see that there were some chat questions coming as well. So Becca may be ready to read some of those out also.
Yeah, I thought there were a couple of good questions that already appeared in the chat. One was whether there will be an impact study for early childhood and secondary education that Lori from Arizona asked.
Would you like to answer that, Mike, or would you like me to?
Why don't you answer the question and then I'll focus on.
Yeah, so not at this time, Lori. So the focus for this particular impact study is really just for elementary and even more specifically grades 3, 4, and 5. So early childhood centers as well as middle and high school activities will be something that we gather information on and report out about through the implementation study, which is the second component that we didn't talk as much about today. But the impact study is narrowly focused on elementary schools.
So Tracy just reminded me of a good point, that although the impact study that involves the lottery is focused only on elementary school. We're also doing a study of achievement trends where we hope to match schools that receive CLSD funds with similar schools that did not, and we'll do that in each state. It hinges on, of course, having the state achievement data as the impact study does, but that's another component, and it's why we want to get achievement data from each of the states. And so there we'll be able to focus on middle school and at least a tested grade in high school, whatever is tested in your state, but it wouldn't cover pre-K. There's some other good questions here. I don't know whether we should ask people who asked questions to just jump in. I think rather than my reading somebody else's excellent question, it'd be better to have the person who phrased it ask it, who posed it ask it.
Well, in the meantime, I can start from what I think is the top with a question from Craig around a requirement about the number of participants per state. And there is not a hard and fast requirement, Craig. As we had mentioned before, we'd like all 11 states to be represented in the impact study. So we'd like to get 2, 3, 4 districts from each state to participate. It sort of depends on the number of elementary schools that each district has. So if you had a really big district with a bunch of elementary schools, maybe we would just have 1 or 2. If you had really small districts with just a few elementary schools, maybe we would have 4 or more even. Does that help? Okay, good question. Becca, I see you're back. Did you want to read some of these? We're on Sean's question, clarifying that the schools would come within the same district. So I could respond to that and maybe then we can pass it back to you. Okay, so Sean, yes, the schools that would be randomly assigned to be in the first or second funding group would be from within the same district.
And so, and I see that Sean, you said that if the state wrote the grant at the school level, not the district level. And so in Arizona, will subgrants be made for particular schools, not to districts? How will that work?
In Arizona, we wrote the grant at the site level. We wrote it as the schools will apply at the school level, not at the district level. So that obviously isn't compatible necessarily with the study. You know, I mean, we can get creative, but I just maybe want you to know from the start. Missouri is the same way. Apparently, we want you to know from the start that there are going to be some states for which this is going to be a larger impediment maybe than others.
So one thing that's clear from our experience implementing the impact study in the first cohort is that every state is different in how they approach this. And so what we want to do is talk to you, so we should have a conversation as soon as possible to learn more about how you're approaching it and to see if there's a way to make the study work. We don't want to, whatever it is, a round peg in a square hole or something. We want to work, either it works out naturally or it doesn't, and then we would just not include Arizona, unfortunately, in the study. But we need to have we have to see if we can work out a way of doing it that makes sense, both for the study and for the way you want to implement the program.
That's right. So we'll follow up with everyone, but in particular, it sounds like it'll be important to get on the phone with Arizona and with Missouri to see, whether there are some districts, for example, that might have multiple sites, multiple schools that are applying. Then I could imagine, a way to do the impact study within those districts, even if the district itself is not necessarily the sub-grantee. So we can put our creative problem-solving hats on and bat some ideas around and just see what what's doable in our follow-up conversations.
So Ellie, we have a question about what kind of materials AIR will provide. If we have an overview of the study that states can provide with districts, what kind of communications we can help with.
Yeah, great question. We do, yes, we have an overview. We have an infographic that is sort of a version of the slides that I shared with the little schoolhouses that shows how the first and second funding groups would implement in a phased rollout way. So we are happy to share that, and we'll send those materials to you when we have our initial call. And you know, having done this already, worked with the 2019 CLSD grantees and their sub-grantees, we have a whole treasure trove of resources that we've put together, including little videos that are sort of like short version of the slides we presented to you today. We have a website that we'll share with you that has a lot of different recruitment resources. We have FAQ documents that we're regularly updating as we learn what questions are frequently asked and what would be helpful for us to share in writing with you and with your sub-grantees. So yes, we'll provide all of that information. We're happy to join webinars that you might have, technical assistant. You know, some states have like grant writing workshops, you know, for districts that are interested in applying. We're happy to join those and talk for as much or as little time as you want us to about the impact study. So we want to alleviate the burden that may be on you to communicate about it. We're happy to be the ones to explain the study and to answer questions, of course, that you have initially, but then that your districts might have.
Excellent. We have another question asking what the measures will be for the impact study.
So the main outcome that we plan to look at will be student test score achievement in ELA or reading, writing assessments. As Mike had mentioned, and as I know you are all aware, we don't have those data for 1920. We may not have them for 2021. So we'll have to be sort of creative about the data that we draw on, but we don't plan to administer a separate assessment. As I hope was clear, the burden on you all at the state, but as well as districts that participate in this study is quite low. So we're not going to be in classrooms doing observations or administering additional assessments or doing a lot of sort of heavy data collection activities. We're trying to be sort of, I don't know, in the wings and following along with what you guys do with your grant and your sub-grants as you do it.
So one thing that is very interesting about this evaluation, as I mentioned, is that each state has its own approach, and each sub-grantee probably has a different approach even within the state. And so one thing we are doing as part of the evaluation is conducting the Subgrantee Survey, as I mentioned. So that will help us know what the sub-grantees that are participating in the impact study are doing with the funds. And then in addition, we'll do a survey of teachers in the schools that are assigned to the first funding group and to the second funding group. And the survey asks about their instructional practices in literacy, and that will allow us to see whether there are differences in the practices that might have been due to receiving CLSD funds. And we'll ask also about approaches to struggling readers, curricula that are used in the classroom, and that will allow us to compare those kinds of things. But those are the only other outcomes that we have apart from the student reading achievement.
So those are all the questions it looks like we have in the chat now, but folks are welcome to type more questions in the chat or unmute themselves and ask in present time.
I have another question. This is LaShondra Scroggins from DC. Right now, we are thinking of having 2-year grants. And so I'm wondering how the impact study would work if we aren't looking across 4 years at one time, but looking at an award every 2 years.
That's a great question. And we have some of the fiscal year 19 grantees had a similar approach. And what we were able to work out with them was that the districts that participated in the impact study, barring, funding going away or, some real breach in terms of being out of compliance or something sort of egregious, that for those districts, they would be allowed to have a 4-year sub-grant. Otherwise, it's sort of hard to imagine telling the schools that are randomly assigned to that second funding group, like, you have to wait 2 years, and also we don't know if you're going to actually have funding when those 2 years comes around. Like, no, nobody in their right minds would want to sign up for that. So, but we in our follow-up conversation, we can brainstorm some different solutions that we've been able to come up with some of the other grantees and see if that might be a path forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. While people are mulling over questions, I see Brandy made a note in the chat that Michigan is on a fast track. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you, Brandy, for flagging that for us. And also to say that in our review of your applications, I think Michigan may not be the only state that's sort of on a quick timeline for their getting their sub-grant competitions up and running. So if you're a state that is maybe already working on your NIAs or really is planning to have your sub-grant competition quite soon, it would be that much more important for us to connect with you just to make sure that we have a plan for how to communicate to districts. Not that they would do anything different necessarily as they write their sub-grant, but more just so that they're aware that this is a possibility and that they may want to consider this just kind of in the background, let it percolate a little bit while they're thinking about their approach to CLSD. And I see Arizona is also, and Missouri. Okay, so we have a number of gunners out there getting ready to go quickly. So we'll make sure to follow up with you all soon. Thank you.
I think we noticed in reading the applications that a few states might be planning to postpone the competition until later on, not immediately, but in the spring or summer perhaps. And so awards might not happen until into the 21-22 school year. And so that would also, of course, change the timeline as we talked about it, or it might. So that's something else we would want to talk about.
That's right. Yep. Sylvia, Cindy, Michelle, Tracy, Jess, anyone else have anything that they'd like to add or ask of grantees as we know this is a lot of information, so it may just take a while to sort of absorb it. Again, we're going to share the recording from today and we'll share, a lot of resources about this because if you're like me, it's helpful to see it in writing and then see it again and again and again sometimes. So we'll be sure to share everything. But for other colleagues from OESC or IES or AIR, any other things you'd like to add?
First of all, thanks. This has been good. So we may have some follow-up questions and we will get that out to you guys. But for now, these have been good questions and a good briefing. So for me, no. So I defer to Cindy and Michelle. But for right now, I don't have any questions.
In the prior cohort of CLSD, we had a briefing somewhat like this with the grant winners, and then subsequently we had briefings with either single districts that expressed interest or groups of districts that expressed interest separately within each of the states. And I think that proved to be really useful. And different subgrantees or potential subgrantees applicants had different ideas about what they were planning to do and different circumstances, how their schools are organized and so forth. And so that made it possible to think about how this might fit in particular situations. And I think that was the most helpful activity, I think, in the previous round, meeting directly with potential subgrantees or actual subgrantees after the awards, because we could talk very concretely about how things would work.
Yes, I agree. And we're happy to do that again, and we look forward to doing that again with districts and potential or actual subgrantees in your states. Okay, well, it appears there are no more questions at this time. We'll again follow up with you all in the next few days and share our contact information. We're always happy to address questions, but we'll have some time set aside to do so right away. And then you should feel free to reach out, as questions come up. You probably go talk to your teams about this, and they'll say, well, what about this? And you'll say, I wish I knew. So please send those questions to us as they come up. You don't have to wait until our call. But we're really looking forward to working with you all on this exciting study. And we, again, really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedules in what is an incredibly challenging year to spend some time thinking about this and free up some bandwidth to consider this opportunity. So we just really want to emphasize that we appreciate it, and we look forward to a partnership with you all on this study. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
We'll follow up soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks.